All right, welcome back. This is episode 30. This is going to be all about intercepting and the real nuts and bolts of change. This is probably one of my favorite concepts out of everything that we've talked about because it's the real actionable step. And I'm just going to go on a tangent here and try and give as many insights to things that have really helped me in this process so that you can try it and you might be able to tweak it and you find what works for you. And that's really exciting. Before we get into intercepting an old habit and replacing it with a new one, with the skill of repetition that leads to adaptation and automation, we need to first understand that everything that we are currently experiencing doing in our day is already a habit and routine. Everything that we do, who we are, is through repetition of stories, beliefs, feeding thoughts, and actions. Now, knowing that, that's not a bad thing. It is completely neutral. But if there is things within ourselves or how we act in a day, maybe a response to something in our life that we don't like, we then go, cool, noted. I'm going to note that down and I'm going to become aware of it because it's no longer going to survive because we know exactly how to change it. And after this video, you're really going to know how to change it. All right, I'm going to go back to my roots of my creation of this new experience that I've got now. Before the barn gym, I was looking for an escape because my reality that I lived, I did not like. What was the biggest thing anchoring me in that reality I didn't like? That kept me there for longer than I needed to be. And that was drugs. Because drugs gave me an instant feeling and escape mentally, where I didn't have to face the pressures and fears and insecurities of my current reality. Now, if this is you, please listen up. And we're going to change everything. So, for me, the bad habit was drugs. Now, this could be anything. I'm just going straight to my experience. I knew that I kept running. I knew that I was avoiding and I was using the drugs as an escape because I knew I had this feeling inside, but I genuinely felt like I was a failure in life because of my experience, because of every day I woke up, it wasn't where I wanted it to be. So I felt more and more like, well, I've woken up and it's not where I want to be. I must just not be worthy or lucky enough to be like the people I admire and to change. Now, I looked at the drugs and I went, all right, I'm gonna work at this. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna really try and just stop this so that I can hurry up and get to the next stage. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, that was a fucking lie when I said that. If you're gonna try at anything, you're gonna fail. You have to make sure you're absolutely certain that you're never gonna quit, especially if it's something like drugs. But you can utilize this same method with any habit that you have. I'm just going to the harshest that I can experience. Now, when I started the process and I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try my absolute hardest. There's that try word again. I went into it. I'd have an hour go by and I'm like, fucking my thoughts are going crazy right now. I really need to I need a break. There's no time for me to go and create a new dream. There's no time for me to focus on doing any task that progresses me forward to my goals because my brain was going into chaos. Now, I ran back and forth. I would stop the drugs. I'd get back onto the drugs and I'd constantly dance back and forth like it was impossible for me. Now, it was until I found some information from Joe Dispenza talking about the river of change. I've spoken about this before, but I'll repeat it again for this example. The river of change has a current. It has a flow and power to it in a direction, represented as your life. That's the river. Now, When I first got into the river to try and change, the river of change, all that flow was super powerful because of all of the time that I had in my bad habit. So the first step that I took in the river, it felt like I had no power against it to stop that flow towards the old habit, the bad habit that I wanted to change. So I ran because of the feeling. It was just overwhelming. But Joe Dispenza says, when you step into the river of change, you have to stay strong, not quit. Repeat the idea of your goal of why you're trying to do it, overcoming the old self to get to the new self, which is why I say the old you and the new you. When you're in there and you're in that battle of between wanting to go back to the old and going towards the new, and the old feels so much stronger than going towards the new, we go into what is called the unknown. Now, the unknown is scary to most people, but it is where creation takes place, and it's where the pivotal points of change begin. So when you're in there, you're in that river of change, and I just remember the feeling of my whole body fighting me, not legit, not like I was possessed, but just fighting me mentally with thoughts to persuade, influence, and show me that golden ticket to go back to the old self where it was comfortable, predictable, and familiar. And I knew where I was going. I had to stop the drugs to get to where I wanted to be. I had to believe in myself enough to push through in that moment. Now, when you're in that moment and in the unknown, it can feel hard to believe in yourself. You've got to conjure up the feeling, and you've got to use the methods that create habits to wire in the story of courage and belief to push through the hardest times. Now, I'm not saying every habit's going to be like this, but in the difficult parts, you're going to need to have some belief that you can do it, which you can, 100%. Something that I noticed the most about being in the river of change when you're in that battle and the current is pushing you towards the old, how fast the change shifts the current to a standstill. All is dictated by your ability to stay strong in the moment and not be fooled, deceived, or influenced to go back to the old. If you can stay strong with your actions, with your routines towards changing the habit and going towards the new self that you're after and crossing that river, the more you do it, it is strengthening the pattern, the thoughts, and the actions to form the new habits and to slow that current to a standstill. And guess what happens when it gets to the standstill? It starts to move in the direction that you want. And this is the amazing moment that I remember. It's like every day I wake up feeling like I need to go and have some drugs to get away from my reality. Every single day, escape. And all of a sudden, after doing the work every day, making sure that I don't quit, because that's what I'd heard. Don't stop. Keep pushing. Next thing you know, it starts getting less powerful and the feeling starts to fade slower and slower and slower. Now, in those moments, if something bad happens in your life, in that moment when it's starting to slow, this can be a pitfall that makes you go back because life just got shit again and your focus gets taken off of the work. This is where we've got to be hyper aware to focus on the right thing of the new self and away from the habits that fuel the old self. Now, when it starts to slow and you're starting to get into that limbo stage where it's like, I don't really feel like I have the impulse to go to the old habit. And for me, it was the drugs. I started to gain a clearer mind. And in that process, guess what happened? Because I didn't have the noise and impulse of my body and mind fighting to get me to the old, I started to change how I thought. I initially knew, because of when it hit that point where the voice of the old quietened, I can now implement new stories, new inspirations and beliefs that back me towards the new self. And when you do that, in that moment, and you don't have all this noise from the old, the speed of action that drives from within you is what makes you spring out of bed. It's what makes you no longer feel like you're imprisoned by this idea, this impulse, or this habit within yourself. And that's where growth just becomes exponential. Like astronomical change. I remember I was like, I think I was like 20 grand in debt or 40 or however much it was. I think it was like in between that. I had no job. I was a bit of a drop kick, no direction. But I had so much inside for me to give. But I was like, why the hell am I doing this? Why not me? Why don't I go and do this? Why can't I change? And why can't I become someone that I want to be? When you ask that question, the old self might be at the last little legs of itself, and it's trying to give you some ideas in your head of the old habits that you thought where you're not going to be able to do it. You're not worthy. Success isn't something that your family gets or you. They're the bullshit smokescreens of the last Hail Mary of the old self. And if I can tell you one thing, the tricks that it plays, if you can become hyper aware of one thing, the old self kind of thoughts, the flavor it gives and the feelings that they bring up. And if you're feeling fear, just know that it's from the old self. And the more that you get that inspirational kind of feeling of, man, I can do this, that's the new self trying to pull you along because you're focused on it. Listen to that, focus on that, and ignore and don't tolerate the old self. Because I can tell you right now, from personal experience, if you can cross that river and you can intercept all of these thoughts and feelings, because feelings is just as powerful as thoughts, harder to articulate, harder to talk about. If you can do that, the feeling difference from going from wherever you are to that new version is like you discovered fire for the first time in the universe. It's like anything's possible. It's like you can do whatever you want, whatever you put your mind to. You know that there's this recipe of change. And this is what's driven me for so long now, for years, like 7 or 8 years now, because I know for a fact that if I want it and I can identify what is stopping me from getting it, if I have something in place that stops me, I can use this same process I'm giving you, where change becomes a fun journey because you know you're no longer prisoned by these things. I don't have to believe I am this way. And that's a superpower that I want for everybody. And I just tend to use these concepts within weightlifting because they come out so easy when we're in pain. But I tell you what, it's good to be able to do that as well because it's an easy reflection. Plus you get jacked and it's nice and stronger. Now, so hopefully that story gave you something. The real key is identify it. Understand it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be so worth it and worth doing. People who do this kind of work, I have the most support for. The worst thing that I can see is someone who's in a state that they hate, in a life that they hate, feeling down, because I know how good we can feel. I know how much better life can get. And if we know that we're the creator of our lives, holy fuck, why wouldn't we just go and do it? I don't understand, but I also understand this because it is hard work and some people lack information, which is what I really want to give here today. It's worth it. So worth it. And if you're someone who, like I said, knows that they've got something inside, a dream, and for some reason that dream started to get pressed down, you first need to understand what story you've attached to that dream now, what beliefs you've got in place for that dream. Because I'll tell you what, most people have the capability to push really hard. Really hard. The most delicate little flowers of the earth, they still have the capability to push really hard. Mentally, almost dropped the mic, mentally and physically. And this is my only goal, is to help people realize they can push really hard mentally and really hard physically. When you combine the two and you're being strategic and you start learning new skills, life opens right up and you expand like a fish going into a fish tank after being in a little bowl. It just goes into it. And then from the fish tank, it goes to the ocean. You just keep expanding because you no longer have these blockages and bullshit stories stopping you from becoming who you want to be. Now, a concept, I know I'm talking a lot and maybe you need to watch this again so that you can gain this picture. You need to understand that when old feelings come up, those old feelings begin the momentum towards the thoughts of the old as well. And those old thoughts turn into the old actions, which lead you down to the path of repetition and adaptation and then automation again. So if we can intercept the feeling, and this is where it gets really cool. If we can intercept the feeling, we're so focused on thoughts. If we can intercept the feeling and actually rehearse the feeling we would prefer to feel, guess what happens? I hope you're already piecing this together. That new feeling brings up new thoughts that fuel the new, and those new thoughts fuel new actions of productivity towards the new. And then the more you repeat it, repetition, automation, new identity. It is like such a crazy concept to overlook, to go in our life blind, going, why does this all happen to me? Why am I the victim? I've done podcasts on victim mindsets before, and you should go back and look at those, but you can see how they get there and how people get there, because we just don't know. And I want to be this little push for you to go and finally give it a shot. No longer going, yeah, I want to do it. I want to go and chase these things. What if you finally did it? What if you start now, not next week, not Monday, because it's the beginning of the week. Mind you, let's say it's bloody Wednesday or Thursday. You got to wait all that time. That's enough time for you to forget and get distracted. If you start now, you start straight away and you start looking at, what do I want? What is the question of what do I want bring up for you? And if you've got this big astronomical dream, great. So good. If you've got a huge dream, see it? Awesome. I've got a guiding light. Now break it down. What's the first bloody step? Not the 10th, not the 9th, not the 8th, not the 7th, not the 6th, not the 5th, not the 4th. What is the first step that gets you on the road towards that guiding light of your big vision? That's all we do. And guess what? Along the way, this process is going to be rinsed and repeated, because you're going to come across new parts you haven't ventured into before, and you're going to be able to grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And you know what? I'm going to go into goals a little bit more in the future and how to work through wiring these with tricks and tips. But for now, I just want you to be aware of this process, which is why I've done 27, 28, 29, and 30, because this is a recipe that we get to carry forward, identifying the old self, creating the new self, becoming aware of the attention that we're paying to certain areas so that we can have the skill of attention direction where we want it. And understanding that the more it revisits the same thing and repeats through repetition, that causes the adaptation response that creates the habit, and the habit leads to the automation. All right, there's my tangent for you. Re-listen to this if you have to, because I know it's a lot. And honestly, in the past, I've re-listened to things like this so many times because we need to ingrain the repetition of what we want in our minds. Thank you for listening to me rant. This was episode 30, Interception and Creating the New Self. I'll see you on the next one.